So Claire, because you came from what was it? Was it confectionery and then Pepsi?
No, it was snack foods, PepsiCo.
Snack foods.
Yeah, Swiss chips.
And then into the brewing lab.
Yep.
So I mean, these would be really good questions for you because obviously brewers always brew the beers and create recipes and have very opinionated styles, but you're more on the consumer side and now the quality side to make sure that beer is of quality. So what would your favourite beer style be?
Ooh, it's changing a lot since moving to Australia. Growing up in the UK, I really love the kind of malt-driven English ales. Some of those cask ales are beautiful. But I'm really quite into like American IPA. I like the red ales. I'm really getting into the hops more these days. Winters, definitely, I love a porter or a stout. And I quite enjoy the sours and the Lenneweisses and stuff in the summer. So I'm a bit of I flip between favourite beers, to be honest.
And depending on whether it's hot or cold, right?
Yeah, definitely. But pretty much if you go in my fridge, there'll always be either American style IPA in there. Or sort of a red ale or something. Enjoying these brut IPAs and the brut beers. I quite like these beers that have been really fermented right out. I quite enjoy that.
The dryness.
Yeah.
The favourite brewery outside of your own brewery. So you mentioned
White Lakes.
It's definitely White Lakes.
Yeah, no,
awesome.
he's a pretty solid brewer. He doesn't do packaged. Package wise, I do live other side. That's close to where we are.
Okay.
So you can always get them nice and fresh. Recently over in Melbourne for BrewCon, I was loving the Filter XPA and the Filter Hazy. I think she's a really solid brewer. They're never bad, those beers.
Awesome. So how was BrewCon for you? Because we were both there. We had a lot of fun.
Oh,
we were out a little bit late.
It's taken me a week to recover. I really enjoyed it. I think this is the first time I've actually been involved in delivering presentations and stuff there. So I couldn't relax as much as I normally would into it.
I totally understand that, yeah.
But no, it's really good. And I really enjoyed Pete Brown's keynote speech. I think he hit a few sort of notes with me, I guess, coming from that British perspective. He was talking about the British beer adverts. And I think we must be of a similar age because I totally remember all those beer adverts as well. But I liked, the message he was delivering about Stella Artois and stuff. That really resonates. I think that's very, very true. So, and I think it was a great lineup. And I think the expo bit was brilliant as well. I had some really good conversations. It's nice to smell some new hops. And
it's cool having that little trade hub where we did the beer workshop.
How good was that? With the silent disco headphones.
And that just kept people more and around.
Yeah, it was good.
Relaxed.
I think they found a really good way to engage people, and it was a bit burning the candle at both ends. So I enjoyed all the social stuff as well.
That's the thing. Like a lot of these conferences, and I go to quite a lot. I always make sure I'm there first thing in the morning.
Yes.
And that I'm not staying out too late because most of the really good talks are usually on in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
The more technical talks.
Yeah, same here. I was there at the start of every morning, even though it was a bit of a slog at times. I must admit, I did have to video a couple of the opening things for a few of my colleagues, but yeah, it was definitely worth it. I can make up for the sleep after. So.
And so how do you think the availability of brewing education is in terms of quality control? I mean, you're one of the founders of Brewer that John set up and like our other volunteer members.
Yeah, well, I like to think it's growing and access to all of that sort of key information is becoming more available. I think where there's probably challenges if you don't work for one of the big breweries like Lion or CUB, access to kind of experts in the field and learning that kind of information has probably been hard for some of the smaller and especially independent brewers. But I think, with Brewer and also the stuff the IBA are doing, I think that's really wonderful because the idea is that if we all get together, there's going to be experts across all of these breweries that can help everybody else. And I think the key thing, and I know we've talked about this a bit with Brewer, is that when somebody has a craft beer, their experience kind of transcends across all craft beer.
Definitely.
So even if they're having a poor experience and it's not with your particular product, really we're all going to be in it together. All of our reputations are tied together.
Growing is like a tide for sure.
Definitely.
And I mean, I work on you with the committee that you're now heading, the quality committee on the IBA, and I think those fact sheets that we're working through are definitely a great place to start.
Definitely, and I think we've now got some webinars planned. I think we're going to try and aim for an October, November for the first one. And it's just giving them an opportunity to ask questions, clarify, find out, share what we're doing, share best practice, really, isn't it?
Definitely.
To make sure that we, as an industry, are not letting the consumers down, and we're encouraging more and more people to drink independent and drink craft. And that can only be done if we're all kind of supporting each other on that front.
I totally agree. Like I had a couple of times, when I did a paper at the IBD, and then I did that wild use one I just spoke, a couple of times people have gone up to me and they're like, well, how come you give so much information away? Why don't you keep this as a book or, sell this information? And it's like, well, I just want to be able to go out and always drink a quality craft beer. I just always want to drink beer that's of quality. And that's what the big guys have always done very successfully. In the TAFE course, you can have something like a Tooheys and it tastes like a Tooheys 12 months later. Just on the edge of the expiry date, it still tastes the same. And that's what the consumer expects. So for me, giving away all of those things that I've learned in my experiences is massively important for all of us growing together as an industry and making sure that we are making great quality beer.
Absolutely. I mean, we owe it to the consumers, and craft beer is not cheap. Sometimes people are paying $18 for a can, close to $100 for a carton. We cannot, you cannot disappoint, because they won't come back. They will go back to your Lion and your CUV products. So, we've got to. It's about delivering value. Staying true to who we are as an industry, but at the same time, not letting people down that are spending, their hard-earned cash.
And what do you think the biggest need in the industry is right now?
I think because we tend to be quite small businesses, I think there's things like, environmental, quality, all of these sort of supporting areas are sometimes difficult for smaller businesses to manage. I think that's starting to be tackled through things like the IBA and Brewer and other initiatives, but just helping everybody to move along with the times, so you're not just brewing beer and selling beer. You can also be a sustainable, environmentally friendly, equal opportunities, employer, and be ticking all of those boxes as well. But I think, getting external help on some of those things is going to be critical for us to develop in those areas.
What do you think the next brewing trend is?
Ooh, that is a good question. It's quite a fickle kind of industry, isn't it, really? You think you know where it's going and then it changes. I'm going to predict, I think it's going to come back again, and I think move away from the more novelty stuff and probably back into, again, like those good solid American IPAs and pale ales and stuff. I may be wrong, but I think,
maybe probably trying to get the balance right in those as well, because they're always very, very hectic, right?
Yeah, and I love that people are pushing the boundaries of the different classifications. I think even like lagers and stuff are probably due to have a bit of love, and they're difficult to get right, as we know from when you're judging and you're doing your beer judging. There's nothing to hide behind in those, but there's nothing more satisfying when you're judging than getting a really clean, good lager.
And judging this year, what do you think were some of the more off flavors? Because quite a while ago, the IBA asked me to write that diacetyl presentation, and that was just because when they judged the beers, diacetyl was a big problem at that time. So that's why I wrote that presentation. What do you think it was this year? Because, I don't taste as much. There's still some breweries doing some diacetyl issues, but not as prevalent as it used to be. It used
definitely.
To be
we hardly came across any diacetyl beers, so that was really good. Yeast autolysis was something I noticed quite a bit, some of those meaty salami flavours. And that was across all styles, which was quite surprising. We were picking it up in from Pilsners all the way down to the stouts.
So pour yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And oxidation obviously is always a challenge, particularly, you know, competitions can run from April all the way through to August. So, you know, sometimes those limited editions that people are entering towards the end of award season are starting to get a bit tired, but definitely maybe with the packaged products, you know, a bit of oxidation is definitely something to watch out for, especially in the hoppy categories, because it just kills off any hops that were in there. You know, sometimes you taste a beer and you think, oh, this would have been a really good beer, but the oxidation's just destroyed all the hop profile.
You know, a lot of these breweries that go in and do a lot of assistance, I mean, the whole point of this roadshow is to jump into breweries and help with micro or quality or brewing issues or process aid optimization. You know, but sometimes it's amazing to me. I learn a lot going to these breweries, and I also, you know, pick up tips and tricks, but also just simple things I notice, simple quality things.
Yeah.
There's one brewery I went to, and they always have their beer in the cool room, so they've only ever tasted their beer cold, and that's including the packaged stuff. So the first thing I said is, you need to put your beers out, because you're not tasting your beer when you've sent it off to the consumer. You're tasting the fridge and thinking everything's fine.
Yeah, that
but
is
it might
so
not actually
true.
be.
Yeah, I mean, that's something like, so at Gage, one of the things we do that I think is really educational is I go out frequently to the bottle shops and I buy our beer back in. And often I'll buy our beer back in and buy, you know, the competitors' products as well, and we taste them side by side, because we do get spoiled. We're drinking fresh beer all the time, or beer at the cool room, and we sometimes lose sight of what it is that our consumers actually getting. And sometimes we're absolutely horrified. You know, the bottle shops kept it warm, and it's, you know, it's not being rotated. But we can't bury our heads in the sand about that, and that helps drive some of the more initiatives that we do to try and improve that or work in our supply chain. But yeah, you've got to drink your beer off the shelves.
Consumers getting smarter too. Like, so I go to a lot of Dan Murphy's, and just, you know, while I'm buying some beers, I have a look around at some of the new stuff. But I also watch a lot of consumers, and I see quite a lot of consumers now looking at the base of cans. They're looking for those best befores or how old the beer is. And they're actually cherry picking.
Yeah, and that's really encouraging, actually, because I think that will drive that part of the beer supply chain to look to be fresher and turn things over and store for a shorter period of time.
And perhaps even refrigerate more.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think cold chain refrigeration is still not as accessible and affordable as it should be for our industry. Essentially, we should be treating our beer like milk, but it's very cost prohibitive to do that. And I think everyone stands to win, you know, both the consumer and the producer, when that becomes a bit more affordable and attainable.
So what's your biggest lab mistake?
Well, I've set myself on fire.
Really?
Yeah. It was in the early days. I was working in a micro lab, and I was flaming the tops of all these Agar bottles, and I accidentally picked up the ethanol bottle and flamed it, and my sleeve caught on fire. But luckily, my colleague put me out pretty quickly. I think it was like 18. I was probably hungover, to be fair, and not concentrating. I didn't do it again.
Yeah, people gave me a lot of grief for saying to, you know, wearing gloves when you're having a flame and how dangerous it is.
Yep.
And I always have been set on fire a couple of times. But the thing is, you can rip the glove off.
Yes.
You can't rip your hand off.
No, you cannot. No.
But yeah, that's a big safety thing. And, you know, I found, I was researching a lot of other options, and steam is now an option. There was a simpler way to use steam instead of the flame for micro. I think that's something that would be a cool area to be developed, to have a smaller system that you could use, like the flame and the Bunsen burners that we use.
Yeah.
But it's just steam generated. So you could steam generate your sample ports and steam the area. I think that'd be a lot safer. I've
worked in a yogurt plant back in the day, actually the place I set myself on fire, and they had steam set up with all their sample taps. So you just turn a steam valve on, walk away for 30 seconds, and then go back and take your sample. And it was great, because you're not carrying around small, like, torches or, you know, gas torches and things. So
everyone's doing right, or what are they doing wrong in the industry?
Well, I think the thing everybody's doing right is that, like, everybody in this industry, I love it because they're super passionate about the product they're making. They care about quality because they enjoy the product themselves and they're very proud of what they do, which is not necessarily true with the rest of the food industry. The rest of the food industry can be quite commodified and it's just about pumping food out. So that's one of the reasons I love working in beer. And I think passion always wins through and taking a pride in your work. Opportunity-wise, I think it's a hard one. I think going back to some of the stuff around resources, around the supporting structures of businesses, is probably a big one. Like just understanding quality, sometimes just understanding the simple, really low cost things you can do, just that will make that much of a difference to your business. But I think that's changing, and I think people are getting more aware.
So I've recently been put on another committee on the IBA, which is the Education, Workplace Health and Safety, and Wellbeing and People Committee.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it is, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've been talking a lot to the people on the committee, is, wellbeing and people is probably a thing that we overlook a bit. In the brewing industry, there's always people might have a beer that might have had an issue, and that brewer doesn't realise there's an issue, and then everyone's, having those beers and laughing about it, but not actually going back to the brewer and telling them.
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that, I think. Look at that butterfly. I think we need to be a bit more aware of that as well. And just how, a lot of these smaller breweries are out there, the one-man shows, they're trying to do all jack of all trades, all the different things. And I just think that people need to take that into thought about that.
Yeah, I think it's easy to criticise or what other people are trying to do, but it's important, feedback. You can't fix stuff if you can't, if you don't know what the problem is. I think that's going to be one of the good things about bringing people together, like with the IBA and stuff, and building up those relationships. Coming back to BrewCon, for these people that are one or two person operations, getting that support network and help. And I think you're absolutely, where you say about there being a gap with health and safety and also well-being and stuff, I think it's great that really important. Been founded, yeah, because it is stressful. A lot of these businesses, people have invested their whole lives into this, and they have a lot riding on it. Production
pressure is very stressful, even when you're in the larger size breweries. Yeah. The pressure to get that beer out, to get that beer of quality, to meet those KPIs, those metrics that are opposed. Yeah. Is definitely puts a lot of pressure, I think. We're in Fremantle. Have I gone too far?
No, you're good. I think you can turn left on the next one and we'll head back.